What's going on, guys? Asian Guy here, bringing you the top 30 legends on the Japanese server and global server of One Piece Treasure Cruise, but fitted with the Japanese meta. So for you global players watching this video, you'll kind of get a better idea of where your units will be if you own them in 3, 4, maybe 5 months time, because that's normally the time gap between the global server and the Japanese server. Now, before we get into the meat of this tier list video, or the top 30 units I've selected, I have a few important notes to make. One, I have 2 tier lists here, one including PvP units and how much I value PvP and how that will shake things up, and 2 without PvP, because I know a lot of people don't care about PvP, so I've decided to split them up accordingly. Both tier lists will also be taking into consideration how good a unit is within each department of the game. So PvP, normal game, as a captain, as a sub, as a support, etc, all that stuff is there as well. We also have all of this on the side here. If you don't want to read it, you can skip it, but you will probably not understand why I've rated certain legends the way I've rated them. For example, a lot of people don't think V1 Rayleigh or Corazon are very good legends. For me, they're some of the best legends in the game, and this kind of explains why. So let me get into this right now. Alrighty, first thing is first, we have gone over the first 2 points already. We're looking at the Japanese server and the Japanese meta. For global exclusive units like V3 Akainu, I've only gone off intuition. Remember guys, this is just my opinion, it's not fact, so it can be extremely disagreeable or agreeable, whichever you see fit. Number 2, we are going to be looking at captain, sub, support, and PvP. Obviously, some legends do not have very good PvP abilities, unfortunately, whereas other ones have really good PvP abilities, and that would definitely make their weighting a lot more higher when you're trying to compare other legends, only if you care about PvP. And we have 2 separate tier lists for that exact reason. Point number 3, I'll be looking at the inability for players to use different variations of the same character in one team. So what this means is you can't use, for example, double Luffy and Law, and therefore you can't have V2 Snake Man on your subs, or you can't have V3 Law on your subs. So Luffy and Law, one massive drawback of them is that they're Luffy and Law, and there are superior versions of that Luffy and Law character. For example, when V3 Law or the new Luffy and Sanji on Japan came out, Luffy and Law basically kind of went extinct, especially on my friends list at least. I do not see Luffy and Law ever anymore on my friends list, because there's absolutely no reason to be using this legend as a captain when they're so inferior to, for example, Luffy and Sanji. So if that makes sense, I hope that makes sense. But yeah, so for example, Luffy and Law can be combined with Shanks Crew because they're completely different units. That's absolutely a-okay. But you can't have Luffy Law as your captains and then have a Luffy Sanji in your team. It just doesn't work like that. You can't fit that many of the same Luffy character into one team, and that in itself is actually a massive drawback. This tier list, point number 4, this tier list will be catered towards the long-time average player. For those of you who watch my stream, you've probably heard of Samuel to play players, which are people who might be free to play or have spent a little bit on the game, but have been playing basically every single day for a long time, so they can easily farm up stuff. They have a lot of stamina. So I would say end game players that aren't necessarily mega paid to win like myself, or super free to play friendly, as in they only use free to play teams. So those kind of things are 2 extremes of the spectrum that I won't really be looking at, and we'll kind of look at the middle-ish section of the player base. Number 5, everyone has different criteria and preferences in the way they rate characters. For me, practicality and relevance to the game and the meta is the number 1 feature. So for example, a lot of team builders out there really rate, for example, Legend Pudding really highly because she's creative, she's a bit more unique, and she's good for very niche purposes. But for me, I'm all about efficiency. I want to cut down as much time as possible when I'm farming stuff, because time is money and I gotta be as efficient as possible. That is the Asian way. So for me, that kind of stuff is important. Other people like artwork will be important for them, or uniqueness. Like for example, Frankie has a very unique mechanic. No one else in the game does anything like Frankie does, and therefore they might rate Frankie really high. So that's kind of, you know, your own personal preferences, but I've kind of tried to cut that out and make it all about efficiency. And then number 6, I hope you enjoyed the video, and please do leave a comment if you have any agrees or big disagrees. Let me know your thoughts, because I love discussion when it comes to tier lists and stuff like this. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask as well. Now, the second part here, I'm sorry it's not over yet, but this kind of stuff is also very important for me to rank, because I think this is where a lot of discrepancy appears. So, part 2 of tier list stipulations and criteria. Number 1, practicality. So rather than hypothetical uses, does this unit actually do well in game? Rather than on paper, rather than in theory crafting, like if you look at it on paper, you're like, damn, this is amazing, this is super good. But in reality, because of the game, the way it plays, the actual usefulness or practicality of that unit doesn't ever see or bear fruit, because the game just decided, you know what, let's kind of scrap that legend. We don't like, for example, Hawkins, right? Hawkins looks okay on paper, but the reality is he's not fast. There's so many other units that can clear the same content faster, safer. So what's the point in ever using Hawkins? Whereas on paper, he can beat the content without much problem as well, but he's just so slow. His mechanics might be a bit too overcomplicated, and there's a lot of stuff in his kit that you might not actually need for the content you're trying to beat. So in that instance, hypothetically speaking, Hawkins is still great, but practicality-wise, he's really far down the scale or far down the spectrum, because there's just so many other better options, and he's just not very efficient at doing the specific piece of content that you're looking to challenge. So for me, I prefer legends that are quick, reliable, and efficient. Point number 2, relevance. Now this ties into practicality, because if a unit is a top priority choice, for example, the example I like to use the most is V3 Bar Hancock. When she came out, she looked good on paper, but then the question was, where can you really use this mechanic a lot? Mihawk and Perona is another good example. When they come out, a lot of people said they look really, really good on paper, but gameplay-wise, you might use them in a few GARP challenges, because ultimately, single bosses with debuff protection nullify their effect and basically make them redundant. Very similar thing to what happened to, I believe, V3 Nami, the quick Onami. A lot of people looked at her when she came out, she's like, damn, she's so good, she's so OP. Look at her now, completely irrelevant. There's no content in the game that really requires her, because ultimately you can just, if you can use a conditional booster, you don't need to bring Nami, you can bring someone else. So that's a bit of an unfortunate thing for her. Whereas V3 Boa, when she came out, she had mini raids designed for her. She can do all the side GARP challenges, one of the best units to do that. She had a Blitz battle for her, she had a Coliseum for her, and she had a Kizuna, all centered around V3 Boa. So in that moment when she was released, she was by far the best unit to own in the game because of how relevant she was. So that kind of stuff is also very, very important. So ultimately, is this unit a top priority pick in like the last 1, 2, 3 months of the game? 3 months might be kind of stretching it a bit too much. So last 1 or 2 months. Longevity, point number 3, takes a look at how long a unit will remain relevant for. I just explained the relevance part, and whether or not it can sustain or re-emerge with this relevance. So a unit that has remained relevant throughout their release since to this day is Douglas Bullet. Douglas Bullet or Kaido, fantastic examples. Kaido will always remain relevant at some point in the game because of GARP challenges, and he will be able to obliterate them. He obliterates the Dex ones, he will obliterate the normals, the first rendition of GARP challenges that we got, 1 through 15, he destroys all of them. So because of that, he will always maintain some sort of relevance in the game. Douglas Bullet, he has type advantage against everybody, and therefore he will always be able to clear like 99% of the new content that comes out. Whether he's the best option to do so is a different matter, but at the very least, he will always be one of like the top 5 picks as captains to run for these Colosseums or these raids that come out because of that type advantage, and because of that he is always relevant. So that is something to look at, longevity. Whereas for example, Luffy and Law, I know I'm bashing on them a lot, so if you are a Luffy Law fanboy, I do apologize, but they're not the best quick captain anymore, they're not the best Dex captain anymore. They are unfortunately a fighter slasher unit, which is not looking great right now. We're looking at Cerebrals, Free Spirits right now, even Driven and Stashes are looking a little bit more promising. But Luffy and Law, the only thing that they have really going for them right now is that they do have a bit of Sasha in their dual form, but in their singular form, their base multipliers are extremely lacking. Their classes, you know, can kind of mess you up, because the game, how it's working right now is you have your subs, and your subs require you to have a specific captain requirement, whether it's their color, their type, or their class, which I don't really like, guys. I'm not really a fan of. I prefer universal subs, but, you know, you gotta have some sort of exclusivity to make the new legend look shiny and pretty, and that's what gets people to pull. So it is what it is. Number 4, personal preferences. I touched on this earlier. Things like speed, safety, efficiency are important to me because I'm a bad player. So I don't really give bonus points for like uniqueness. For example, Frankie, I don't really care about his uniqueness because the uniqueness doesn't really equate to efficiency at the end of the day. Number 5, niche uses. While this is also a personal preference, it is undeniable that certain qualities are objectively beneficial. For example, Jack and Buggy. More EXP, especially in late game with Jack, is universally better for every single player in the game. You have more stamina the more you level up. It's just better. There's really no arguing that. It is just better. And for example, Buggy, duplicating stuff is always going to be better than not duplicating stuff if you can run it. For example, we are going to be getting a PvP Scroll Island coming very, very soon to Japan. And let me tell you, Buggy is going to be amazing for that. And if you don't have Buggy, you're already at an inherent disadvantage. So for stuff like that, it's a big thing. Chopper is another one. If you are disadvantaged for candy, that's not good for PvP. Even in PvE, if you have more candy, it's better as well. So objectively speaking, it is, it is better. It is better. And last but not least, clear rate and damage. Now, a lot of new players like to look at clear rate and they like to look at damage and they're like, whoa, this unit does 3 billion damage. But what boss has 3 billion HP? You don't need 3 billion HP. The highest HP enemies we have right now, outside of Kizunas, outside of treasure map modes, which scale off level, is like 40 million, maybe 50 million. So if you can hit that, it doesn't really matter what team you're using, which is why clear rate is also not that important, because ultimately in this game, you're not going to be just focusing on one legend to beat every single piece of content, right? You have multiple legends to cover multiple aspects. So naturally, there will always be a piece of content that one unit will not be able to clear. But that one unit might be able to clear 99 out of 100 other things, but they just can't clear one. Whereas one legend that's not very good at clearing anything, but can still clear 100% of it, that doesn't make that unit better. Because if it's slow to clear it, if you have to cheese your way through it, that doesn't make it better. Clear rate is not the be-all, end-of for these kind of units. Be-all, end-all of these units. So for me, clear rate is just like a tiebreaker. It's like goal difference in football / soccer if you're American. But yeah, that kind of stuff for me is not that important. V2 Blackbeard, sorry. Oops, spoilers. V2 Blackbeard. I know a lot of people look at his damage and like, whoa, he can do 9999999 damage. But okay, you take that into a difficult Coliseum. That damage probably isn't going to do well if you don't have the utility on your team. So you can clear most content with most legends if you really put your mind to it. So for me, clear rate is ultimately a tiebreaker quality. Now that's the stipulations, finished and done. Let's get into the tier lists. Alrighty guys, top 30 legends. This is the list including PvP. So if you do care about PvP, then this is the tier list for you. If you don't, that'll be the next one. I'm going to flick between both of these so you guys can see what has changed. So at the top here, if you would like to look, Luffy and Sanji and Shanks Crew, both in S1. However, if you take out PvP from it, I've actually dropped Shanks Crew down to S2 because I believe personally in PvE, nobody is on the same level as Luffy and Sanji. Shanks Crew is really, really close, don't get me wrong. They are by far the second best legend in the game. But as a captain, this legend, Luffy and Sanji, is completely filthy. Even as a sub, completely filthy. Really, really, really broken legend. Super, super brain dead. More brain dead than any other legend in the game. You can make so many mistakes with this legend, and you will still likely survive. As you guys have seen me play on stream, I've made many mistakes with Luffy and Sanji, and they've got me into very embarrassing positions, but they've also gotten me out of these impossible looking situations. Very, very good legend, and they're amazing in PvP to boot as well. However, with the Shanks Crew, I gotta say, at least when it comes to PvP, that does push them into that same bracket once again. Because Shanks Crew, you're on global, you already know how obnoxious this unit is. One of the tankiest units in the game. It's a super tank unit, and there's no really two ways of getting around it. Now, if we look at this list, for example, you can see 6+ Dofi's down there, V2 Shanks is down there, Tezoro's down there, you've got V2 Rayleigh on this list. However, those units aren't that amazing. They're very good in PvE, don't get me wrong, but they are not like top tier. and none of them make the tier list when we're excluding PvP. I've gone for other units selected there. Luffy and Law doesn't even make S tier when you're taking a look at PvP as well. I know that's going to blow some people's minds, but I do think we have moved away from the era of Luffy and Law, and I will talk about that in a moment. So let's actually start with the non-PvP tier list. Alrighty, so I know my tier list can take a very long time to watch, so if you would like to put this video on 1.5 times or even 2 times speed, just go ahead and do it. I watch all my videos on 1.5 or 2 times speed anyway, so I will not blame you for doing so. It doesn't really affect me in any way, shape, or form. So, Luffy and Sanji, the standalone best legend in the game. I honestly do not think anyone can really debate this outside of Shanks Crew. I personally do think Luffy and Sanji is in a different universe because they are a universal 5 times attack boost in their base form, 3.75 with Sanji with additional healing, plus 3,000 at the end of the turn with full auto heal sockets, plus 4,000 with the X Drake ship, and you can over heal, guys. For those of you who don't know what Luffy and Sanji do, they over heal, which is insane. So instead of having a flat cap of 80,000 HP, what you will have is your HP will be like 40,000. However, you can heal an additional 40,000 HP. Now, if you're overhealed past this 40,000 HP, say you have 41,000 out of 40,000 HP, that will be considered as full HP. So your maximum HP is essentially 80,000 at 40,000. So you have 40,000, you can overheal up to 80,000. If you're 56,000 out of 80,000 maximum HP, that will still count you as full HP, which is so good for a lot of different units that require HP requirements, ships that require HP requirements, and Luffy and Sanji themselves, who at full HP will have a 5 times attack boost, and then a 2.5 times attack boost, which changes all orbs into meat orbs, which is incredible. 2.5 times attack boost, full board of matching orbs with their switch ability tied in, or a sailor ability that makes meat orbs beneficial, is absurd. That is actually insane. And to top it off, they will also give an absurd amount of healing, which will probably take you up to your overhealed maximum as well. And their switch ability reduces bind, reduces despair, reduces paralysis, changes their own orb into meat orbs, and make meat orbs beneficial as well. Base multiplies 3.75 times with Sanji, Luffy 4 times attack boost at full HP. I just gotta say, guys, this is honestly a very, very broken unit. Really, really strong. And to top it off, they are a Luffy and Sanji, so being a Luffy is essentially a drawback, but in this instance it's not, because this is the best Luffy legend in the game. With Sanji, this is definitely the best Sanji legend in the game. Osoba Mask, I used to always have in the top 5, but I have had to drop him down. Osoba Mask is a 2.5 times attack boost after you use his special the second time round as a sub, but then you can also just have a flat 2.5 times attack boost with this Luffy and Sanji, or 2 times if you are not at full HP. And as a sub, the Luffy and Sanji, if you use that special, they can overheal any unit. So if you're running any captain, you have Luffy, Sanji as a sub, for whatever reason, I don't know why you'd be using them as a sub, they will overheal that captain even further from their max HP as well. So they allow that overhealing mechanic on all units, which is amazing. They have the new socket, the new limit break socket, Hunger. Hunger is a new debuff, which we have seen a bit of now. It's very obnoxious. You need meat orbs to get rid of the Hunger debuff, and naturally, Luffy Sanji can get rid of it with their limit break, and if you can't get rid of it with the limit break, you can use their switch ability to guarantee you meat orbs. They're basically Whitebeard and Marco on drugs, like extreme overpowered drugs, Whitebeard and Marco. So that is Luffy and Sanji. Best legend in the game for PvE, best captain, one of the best subs in the game as well. Now we take a look at Shanks Crew, V2 Snake Man, V3 Law, and Vivi and Rebecca, who make my top 5 units for PvE. Now in second place is definitely Shanks Crew. If I could have an S 1.5, that's where Shanks Crew would be. They are not as good as Luffy and Sanji, but they are definitely better than the other 3 legends in this category. But I would say they are closer to these 3 legends than they are closer to Luffy and Sanji, which is why they are here. There is no order, by the way, here, guys. This is just basically going as dual units at the front, then strength, quick, psi, etc. Strength, quick, strength, dex, quick, psi, and int. So that order is how I've gone for it from left to right. But then we have V2 Snake Man, V3 Law, and Vivi and Rebecca. Shanks Crew, I don't think I really need to talk about them. They have a really overpowered switch. 3 orbs made into matching adjacent orbs if you have them as a sub, or 2 if you have them as a captain. They have damage reduction in their kit. They have end of turn damage in their kit as a captain. 4.5 times universal attack boost. 10 turns silence reduction. Increased HP. What a unit. What an insane unit. HP cut, which goes through defenses. 3.5 times chain lock as a captain. What a unit. If you would like to look at what all of these units do, head on over to the OPTC database. Link is in the description down below. But Shanks Crew, amazing captain, amazing sub. Really, really, really good unit. Second best unit in the game for me. V2 Snake Man. A lot of people have been asking, where is V2 Snake Man on the tier list? Where is he going to be in 5 months' time for Global? Unfortunately, or actually maybe fortunately, for global players, it does look like the timeline for global is going to be different because Kizuna Cara is currently in play and you can use this V2 Snake Man for the Kizuna Cara. What unfortunately happened for JP players is we had the V2 Snake Man, we had the V2 Blackbeard, we had V3 Katakuri and the V4 Sabo or V3 Sabo come out, and there was no content at all for the next 2-3 months for them to do at all. There were no Dex bosses, there were no side bosses, so there was no reason to play with any of these units because they couldn't make use of their color affinity advantage outside of GARP challenges. Now, V2 Snake Man is by far one of the best captains to run in GARP challenges, especially the Doflamingo ones. He obliterates them, and I mean obliterates them like actual violation. Really, really good unit. Rainbow captain. A lot of people are like, oh, but he's only a 3.75 times attack boost. I mean, with a 2.5 times orb boost, a 2 times universal attack boost for all units in the game, I don't think that's really a big deal, especially when he will give himself 5 times attack boost for strength units who have a strength or meat orb, which is really, really good. The only thing that he might struggle with, even just a tiny bit, is having quick bosses. But if you have quick bosses, just don't run the Snake Man. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to clear rates, guys. Just don't run him. You can still run him into him because he can still beat those quick bosses just using Dex subs, since he is a universal booster with 3.75 times attack boost. That is still enough. At the end of the day, it would just be silly to challenge content like that. So V2 Snake Man, still an amazing captain. For me, probably the 3rd best captain in the game. And as a sub, a fantastic sub as well. Obviously, you can't use him on a Luffy Sanji team, but you can use him on, for example, a Shanks Crew team, on a Sober Mars team, a Douglas Bullet team, etc, etc. V3 Law, one of the best subs in the game. I would have put him on the sub side there, but he is also an amazing captain. The best damage reduction captain in the game, which still has a really high attack boost. At not full HP, he has a 4 times attack boost, guys. That's already mad. At full HP, he has a 4.5 times attack boost for, I believe it's Strikers, Free Spirits, and Fighter units, which covers a lot of good classes. Strikers has all the good utility Namis in there. Free Spirit units, we all know, guys, Free Spirit is by far the most broken class right now. And then you also have the Fighter units, which are seeing a bit of a rise right now on Global. Although I would say it's going back to slashers right now, which would be a mini downside for this lore. Even though he is a slasher unit, guys, he does not boost slashers, which I think is a little bit strange. It is what it is, but it means you can use him as a sub for slasher captain teams. So that's still very nice. One of the best orb boosters in the game. Orb manipulation is through the roof as well. Just like all of these units, they all have orb manipulation. They all have a base at least 4 times attack boost in their final forms, going up to 4.5, going up to 5 times, which is really, really nice. And then to top it off, this lore again has amazing healing, amazing damage reduction. He has the X-Drake ship, which is amazing for him as well. Amazing chain lock, which goes up with chain boost. It's a different kind of chain lock. So for those of you who don't know, there's a chain lock that keeps it fixed. Whereas his chain lock, it just means your base chain lock is going to start at 2.5 and then it can still increase, which is amazing. It goes in with chain boost. Very, very nice. Orb manipulation again, 2.25 times orb boost. Amazing, amazing unit. The best sub in the game. The best sub in the game for me is Vivi and Rebecca. So I forgot to mention this at the start of the video, but the left-hand side here are the best captains. The right hand side here are the best subs. However, for units who have both good captain abilities and good sub abilities, just like this V3 Law, I have shifted them over to the captain side, especially if they have a top tier captain. Whereas like units like Osoba Mask, they shine more as really only as a sub nowadays. Even though they do have a good captain ability, you will only really see them as a sub. Whereas V3 Law, you will see them all the time as a captain or as a sub. So yeah, Vivi and Rebecca, obviously not the best captain in the world. It's not a bad captain ability, but what they are here for, their overpowered switch ability. Guaranteed 2.5 times chain lock or manipulation, which changes strength and dex orbs on cerebrals and strikers, and then to top it off, an additional piece of healing at the end of the turn. What a unit, what an incredible unit. And the special ability gives 2 turns of 2 times color affinity to cerebrals and strikers, and to top it off, one of the best mechanics in the game, completely removing enemy damage reduction buff or enemy defense up buff, some of the most obnoxious buffs in the game. Boy oh boy, this unit unlocks so much Garp challenge content, unlocks so many teams to beat endgame content. Without them, you might just not be able to run any teams to beat any of the very endgame piece of content. They're very good in Colosseums and raids as well. Just for their switch ability, it's still very good. And they're also very good on a chopper team for power farming cotton candy. Let's move on to S3. Okay, S3, we're going to blast through these. Douglas Bullet, you guys all know what he does. 4.75 times attack to himself, 4 times attack to strength, quick, and int units. And he has the end of turn special ability, which will deal 2 times his attack from his own individual attack, and this scales off his massive boost for his own attack stat, which is going to have rainbow color affinity against all enemies, which means, for those of you who don't know, he has a type advantage against everyone, which gives him 2 times more damage, which is amazing. That's essentially never going to be outdated. The only time Douglas Bullet is going to become outdated is when a 4 times and a 4.75 times attack boost just isn't going to cut it anymore. Amazing captain. Has the best longevity in the game out of everyone, in my opinion, right now as a captain. The only downside of him is his special. Doesn't really see much play because its cooldown is high. There's normal attack only debuff as well, but really he's just there because of the type advantage for or against everyone. Legend Sugar, very nice captain, decent as a sub as well. She is a super type legend for quick units, but you shouldn't be looking at her as a super type legend. She is a universal captain. Her one big drawback is naturally that her base attack boost, if you don't fulfill her conditions, which is having a 40 cost unit or less, is a 3 times attack boost for that unit who is over 40 cost, which is a real kick in the nuts. It's something I also don't like about Luffy and Law, is their base form attack boost is really poor. However, if you're 40 costs or less, or you pop her specials and you change those units into 40 cost units, aka toy soldiers, they go down to, or they go up rather, to a 4.5 times attack boost. She has a 2.25 times orb boost, which cannot be interrupted, which is amazing. She can go through barriers. She does not go through defensive effects, but she can go through barriers. She has a very unique chain boost where each individual unit will actually boost the chain every time they hit if they are a toy soldier. The big drawback for this Sugar though is team building with her. Team building with her is definitely not as straightforward as other units, which make your life very brain dead. You have to be very meticulous and very pedantic in the way you plan your teams to beat certain pieces of content, unless it's very obvious that the content is designed for Sugar. For example, if it's a strength boss, there's lots of barriers on the game, or there's lots of paralysis because her toy soldiers will ignore bind and paralysis when they attack. That's very nice. The other drawback of her is that there's not much room for error, and I think that's also the case with all of these legends. Douglas Bullet, if you mess up a perfect or you mess up stalling, you're probably in trouble. With Sugar as well, if you mess up the toy soldiers attack order, you might be in a bit of trouble as well. Let's move on to Chopper. Now Chopper, he is a top 10 legend for me. Might not be a top 10 legend for a lot of people, but for end game players, the #1 commodity in the game right now is cotton candy. maybe even more valuable than gems for certain players in the game. If you're looking at PvP, you see all the top ranking players are grinding out cotton candy right now so that they can get to plus 600 cotton candy, which I will probably never get to. I don't think I will ever reach those heights, and I don't think I ever want to, but plus 500 or plus 540 candy is something I might be looking at in the future. But Chopper, if you want candy, I'm in a candy deficit right now. I desperately need candy. He is the go-to legend, and at a 3.5 times attack boost with insane utility in his kit as well. Really good captain. Overall, you can use him to leech on multiple different units. Right now, the latest Colosseums, or the previous 3 Colosseums that came out, guys, with like 40 million HP, Chopper can leech off another captain, or rather partner up with another captain to actually clear it. And on top of that, because he's so good as a captain and he has so much utility, he's actually really good for Invasion Sengoku as well. So if you want to beat Invasion Sengoku as well as beating the latest Colosseums, use Chopper and the new special unit that was released for that Colosseum, and bam! You've got a great team that can beat Invasion Sengoku and the Colosseum while giving you a crap ton of extra cotton candy. Really good as a sub as well, which is why he's so high up. His captain ability is basically priceless. His utility as a sub is amazing through the roof. So even as a captain or a sub, he can go on both sides there. Really, really good unit. V3 Bar Hancock. Now V3 Bar Hancock I had a little bit lower, but I have had to bump her up, and I'm glad I get to bump her up because of this Germa 66 unit. These two combine together to basically destroy any piece of content in the game, because the Germa 66 unit are the only other unit that outside of boosted events have a rainbow color affinity when you use their special and switch them from a sub to a captain. And on a side team, oh boy, let me put it this way. Bar Hancock, right? This V3 Bar Hancock has a mechanic which is mediocrely useful, because in anywhere there's a debuff protection, you can't use her special other than for cooldown and for end of turn healing to activate her super type ability. But her super type ability, guys, her super type ability changes all orbs, including block, into Psy orbs, and gives Psy units a 2.5 times attack boost. By far the best super type ability on the game. That is so freaking broken. Obviously, Psy units don't have negative color affinity, so they don't have a type disadvantage against anyone. And then to top it off, so on top of neutral damage, with this new Germa 66 unit, you can combine that 2.5 times attack boost with the orb boost coming through from the Germa, which is 2.25 times orb boost. They have an additional chain boost. They will also change all your orbs into tandem orbs, which is what they will make as beneficial orbs themselves. And then when they're captain, they have the same type boost for the Psy units, 5 times for super type units. And then bam, they themselves will have rainbow color affinity against all enemies, which means you will have more than enough damage to take out any boss. You can easily hit 40 million on all colors with just one unit having rainbow affinity. So this combination, really powerful. It's kind of hard to explain in words, but if you do see gameplay, I highly recommend you check out Subconsi showcase videos. Amazing duo to have. Really nice. I might showcase them myself sometime soon, but they are such a nice combination to have. And Bar Hancock, she can also infinitely stall on stages which have like 3 or 4 mobs that don't have a debuff protection. So she's very good for the Psy Garp challenges, because there isn't a single stage in the Psy Garp challenges which has an all debuff protection. So Bar Hancock special can basically infinitely stall through all of those and basically have you at full HP, and which is just very nice. It's just really good. And of course, barrier penetration got a massive buff. Barrier penetration now, which she has, the V3 Boa, will go through the barriers while also breaking the barrier at the same time. So that's an amazing new buff to the limit break. Sabo and Koala and Osoba Mask, 2 free spirit gods, although Osoba Mask is a universal booster. And then we have Sabo and Koala, who is cerebral as well. Their switch ability is amazing. Sorry guys, my wife just woke up. But with Sabo and Koala, they will give you color affinity for the free spirit and cerebral unit when they switch. And then gives themselves an orb, 2.25 times attack boost. They're the only unit in the game that still gets rid of this very annoying debuff, which is having badly beneficial orbs, which is really, really nice, really good for loads of Garp challenges, really good for loads of forests. Basically, just like Vivi or Rebecca will unlock so many of your teams, especially the Free Spirit and Cerebral ones, which is exactly what Vivi and Rebecca are. They have Free Spirit in there, although that's not their main dual class. I believe it is Rebecca who is Free Spirit. Or it might be Vivi. Actually, it might be Vivi who is Free Spirit. I think it's Vivi who's Free Spirit. But they are Cerebral as well. Very nice combination. The holy trinity, guys, of switch abilities. You have Shanks Crew as a sub, giving you 1.5 times attack. You have Vivi Rebecca, which gives you more orb manipulation if Shanks Crew doesn't do it for you. And then we'll also give you end of turn healing and a chain lock. And then you have the color affinity coming through, because all three of these units are Cerebral units. Sabo, Koala, color affinity. They will give themselves a matching orb as well. So that's my ideal team on Chopper. So for old Colosseums, I run Chopper. And then I have, for example, Vivi and Rebecca. I have Shanks Crew and Sabo and Koala. I don't have to stall on old Colosseums. I can just use those switches. And I'll be able to do like 5, 6, 7 million damage to the bosses, which is enough for old Colosseums and very good way to power farm cotton candy. But yes, Sabo and Koala are like a key unit to have, just like Vivi and Rebecca. If you don't own them, there's most likely a ton of content that you can't even bother to attempt or even attempt because it's just impossible without them. Then we have I'm just going to call him a Soba Mask, Sanji. Very nice captain ability, not the best in the game, just like Sabo and Koala. They do have a good captain ability, although it's a little bit outdated now. We'll change all your orbs for all units into tandem orbs. He will make tandem orbs beneficial as a sailor ability. And if you use his special twice, which is very easy to do because he gives himself 4 turn cooldown reduction after using a special, or anyone else on your team uses a special rather, he will be able to activate it a second time. If you use it a second time, the attack boost will be a 2.5 times attack boost, full board of matching orbs, as opposed to 1.75 times attack boost and full board of matching orbs. Very, very good sub. Very good for V2 Snake Man. Very good for V3 Law. Very good for Shanks Crew. Very good for any team. Really good in Kizunas as well. But unfortunately, because of Luffy and Sanji, I have had to bump him down. For me personally, I don't think he holds up as well. If you have Luffy and Sanji, you're most likely going to be wanting to use Luffy and Sanji over running Osoba Mask. But Osoba Mask, if you don't have Luffy and Sanji, is still going to be one of the best units in the game. Even if you do have Luffy and Sanji, still one of the best units in the game. But yeah, because of the existence of Luffy and Sanji, just falls down a little bit. Same thing with V2 Snake Man, just falls down a little bit. German 66, I already talked about them. They're better off as a sub than a captain. You want to use them as a sub for V3 Law or also this V3 Bar Hancock. Gives you the super typing ability to have rainbow damage, really. Rainbow damage, also little chain boost, changes your orbs into tandem. Tandem orbs count as beneficial. Very, very, very nice. The reason though that I have V3 Boa and also this German 66 unit at the tier 3, so S3 rather than S2, is because they're not universally as good as all the other units above them. So the 4 units or the 5 units above them, they're all universally good for basically any team, whether you're free to play friendly, you're paid to win heavy, or you're smack bang in the middle. Amazing. Amazing for every box. Whereas all these other units down here, minus Chopper, I would say it's actually very dependent on who else you have in your box. If you don't have the right units in your box, you will not be able to utilize these legends to their maximum efficiency, whether you're free to play friendly, whether you're super paid to win heavy. Even if you're super paid to win heavy, if you don't have the correct units in V3 Boa or the German 66 and all the other paid to win rare recruits in the game, then you might be in a sticky situation when it comes to team building for them. So that's the one drawback I would say of the V3 Boa and the German 66, is that they're just a little bit too paid to win heavy, a little bit squishy as well for using the V3 Boa team, but there's a lot of room for error there. For my personal, very, very biased view, I would put both of those two up in S2 though, together. So that's my own personal take on it. But I think overall, for the player who is smack bang in the middle, this unit is not going to be as useful and not as efficient as the 5 other units ahead of them that I've put there. Let's move on into S4. V3 Akainu, the global exclusive legend. Now, a lot of people might be upset I put him all the way down in S4. However, the way the Japan meta has gone, we have unfortunately, for the Strength Dex quick units, had a lot of Psy and Int bosses recently. And obviously, we all know Akainu cannot bring Psy and Int units whatsoever. When the meta changes, this Akainu will probably skyrocket up to either S2 or S3. Definitely S3 if we get Strength Dex and quick bosses. But right now, Psy and Int bosses, name of the game. We're basically using Psy and Int bosses all the time. The Akainu, the other drawback for him is because he can't use Psy and Int units, unlike, for example, Douglas Bullet, who doesn't boost Psy units, but he can still use them without a punishment. That is something which is a real big drawback for this Akainu. I also think that means dual units are off the table. For example, you can't use Shanks Crew on the team unless you're going to just keep it as Shanks all the time. Not on the crew all the time. The moment you switch to Shanks, who's a Psy unit, he's going to lose all of his attack boost. The V3 Akainu will lose all of the attack boost, which I think is quite a big drawback. However, for global, he's definitely one of the best legends to run. Strength Dex quick, very nice. I'm not sure if global is going to get a lot of Strength Dex quick enemies. I know next month it's most likely going to be Legend Kid and Legend Basil Hawkins, so you will have a lot of quick bosses. But when that comes, you always also have Kaido to look out for, Luffy and Law to look out for, Sanji, or rather, sorry, Luffy and Zoro, and also the Legend Kid himself to look out for, as well as other Dex alternatives. So the problem with V3 Akainu for me is, even though he's a 4.5 times attack boost when you have matching orbs, which is amazing, and he has a great kit, he has attack boost, he has conditional boost as well, barrier reduction, really nice. The big drawback for him is that I don't think he will ever be the first choice pick for any piece of content in the game going forwards. I think the way they released him on global is very smart, where he can still stay very relevant. However, when all the super type meta comes to global, I know it started just now in global, I think you will see as time passes that without the super typing, it might be a bit of an oof. Just a tiny bit of an oof. He can't bring Psy and Int units to cover certain utility positions. He will always be the second, maybe third or fourth or fifth choice captain to be running, which is like Douglas Bullet, which is a really nice thing. But unlike Douglas Bullet, I don't think he has the capability of ever being the first choice captain. He's not going to pump out the biggest damage numbers. For Kizuna, you have better strength captains for that, you'll have better dex captains for that, and you'll have better quick captains for that as well. And yeah, that's just how I personally see it. I think he will easily always be a top 5 choice to have, just never top 1, maybe not even top 2. So that's what I see V3 Akainu as on the Japan meta. Global though, right now, I think he can be 1, 2, and 3 very comfortably. Kaido, I've already touched on Kaido already. He's always going to be relevant for GARP challenges. He's always going to be relevant for clearing stage 1 and 2 of Colosseum. So he will always have this longevity and relevance in the game. And that's just very useful. He's very good against quick bosses. But outside of that, obviously he can't do any very difficult content. Anything with normal attack only he's going to struggle on. So he will never be anywhere above a S2. So he will never get into S2 or S1 for me personally speaking. He will always be at maximum an S3, and that's only when we have a lot of quick content coming around, which we don't have right now. We haven't seen a lot of quick content ever since Legend Kid disappeared, so it is what it is. Right now, the name of the game is Psy Bosses. If you are playing Japan right now, it's all about using Int units. V3 Blackbeard, one of the best damage dealers in the game, very tanky unit, can fit a lot of utility units on his team because he's so tanky. So he's very good. He doesn't have problems clearing basically anything because he himself does so much damage. He's amazing in GARP challenges. Very fun unit overall, although fun is not something I personally consider as an important factor. I think he is a superb unit. But again, his relevance will plummet once all the side bosses go. Once they're gone, his relevance will only be limited to GARP challenges, really. There's no reason to run this unit against enemies that he cannot have type advantage against, because you're just making your life harder. It's just very inefficient to do so. But against side bosses, very nice. In damage rankings, the best legend to be using as well. Very straightforward legend to be using for damage rankings as well. This new V4 Law. We've just had a V3 Law. We now have a V4 Law. Again, as I said, we are in the Int meta right now. Int and Psy meta right now. And with this Law, the very nice thing about this Law is he's very much like Kaido. So if you like Kaido, you're going to like this V4 Law. He will reflect 100 times the damage he takes instantly to the enemy, which is very, very good. And in int damage as well. So against Psy enemies, it will be even more. The one big drawback of this, though, and I don't know how this is going to keep up in the future, is that stalling is going to be a really big problem. So some people like to stall like 5, 6, 7 turns on turtles. On Law, if the turtle has a 3-turn cooldown, and that's the highest in the room, well, you're kind of screwed. You can only stall 3 turns there, because the moment that turtle hits you, he's going to reflect like that 2,500 damage into 250,000 damage to all enemies. So that is the one big drawback of this Law. The other thing with this Law, just like the Blackbeard, is that they only boost int units. They cannot bring other units, whereas the Snake Man, the Bar Hancock, the German unit, they're actually rainbow captains. They will boost all units by 3.75 times attack. This Blackbeard, this Law, this Mihawk, unfortunately don't boost the other colors. They will only boost int units by their respective amounts. And Law is unfortunately like Smoker. It's a ramping up captain damage, so he doesn't have a flat 5 times attack boost for all units. He will start at 4.25. Every perfect you hit will boost that up as well. That's something I'm not a real big fan of, but he reduces despair in his kit, very good. The reflective damage is very good, and he's very tanky as well. He has resilience in his kit, amazing all boost in his kit as well. Amazing, amazing unit. I think he might move up in the future, but right now it's still a speculative position. I put him in there at S4. There are 2 utility support gods. Without these 2 in the game, you're just not going to be able to run a lot of content. It is what it is. You guys all know who it is. It's Corazon 6+, and Rayleigh V1 6+. They're amazing as subs, but they are the best supports in the game, hands down. They're so diverse, so useful. They enable so many teams. If you don't have them for the extra bind, despair, or paralysis reduction coming through from support, you're going to be screwed on a lot of team building scenarios. So that's just how it is. I think they are super, super useful. If I could save like 10 units in the game, these 2 or one of these 2 would always make it into the top 10 for me, even though a lot of people wouldn't consider them top 10 legends. For me personally, I do think they are, in terms of usefulness, a top 10 legend. In terms of raw power, obviously not a top 10 legend. They have no damage to them. They can't clear stuff as a captain. They're not as useful as the other units in the top 5 at least. Maybe in the Rose S3, they are more useful than them for sure. But are they more viable? Are they stronger? That's up for debate. So that's why I put them down in S4. Because something about saying that, yeah, Rayleigh and Corazon are a better legend than, for example, the V3 Boa or the German 66, that doesn't sit right with me. However, if you were to say this Corazon and Rayleigh are more useful, then yeah, I would agree. That's why for me, they have to make it into the top 30. They have to be somewhere in the top 30, and I do think their usefulness, no one will disagree on how useful they are. They are such an important unit. Everyone who doesn't have them is suffering, and we all know that by now. So they are fixed on, they will always be in the top 30, unless we start getting a whole array of other free-to-play units that do exactly what they do. Not free spirit, the reduction of bind, despair, and paralysis by 2 turns. Let's move on to the free spirit captain, Luffy and Zoro. Luffy and Zoro, the one saving grace for them above Luffy and Law is the War Orbs. They are unfortunately a Luffy unit. There are much better Luffy units to be using, V2 Snake Man or Luffy and Sanji. Realistically speaking, there is no place to be using Luffy Zoro over Luffy Sanji or V2 Snake Man anymore. For me, I don't have Luffy Zoro. I still want them, but even if I pull them, I will probably not use them ever for PvE, because Luffy Sanji is just better in every way, shape, and form. Their switchability is essentially identical outside of the War Orbs, but the War Orbs, while they do give you bonus attack boost, their attack boost, the captain unit, is capped at 4 times, which is inferior to the 5 times attack boost that you get from Luffy and Sanji. So that it is what it is. They have a nice chain lock and orb boost for free spirits and sashes. Sashes are still kind of dead right now. Free spirits are amazing right now, but that's because you have units like Luffy and Sanji or V2 Snake Man or V3 Law who just happen to be free spirit units as well. Legend Kid. On release, when Legend Kid came out, he was one of the best legends to own because all the content was catered around him, just like how it was for V3 Boa. He's going to get a Coliseum, he's going to get a raid boss, he's going to get a Kizuna, he's good in Garp challenges, etc, etc. But once that 1.5 months ends, guys, he falls into irrelevancy, unfortunately, because we just don't get any quick bosses. It is what it is. I haven't played with him for a very long time. I hate to see it because he was a very fun legend to play with. He does boost all units. However, his special ability will only boost Dex units. So even if you bring all units, it's not the same as V2 Snake Man. You're not going to get that big boost on all of them. So unfortunate as it is, I have had to put him all the way down in S5. The reason why he's still in this top 30 though is because his relevancy is still through the roof. Not relevancy, sorry, his longevity is still through the roof. He is by far the best Dex captain. So because he's the best Dex captain, there's no way I'm going to drop him out of the top 30. There's no one else that rivals him as a Dex captain right now. So when we do eventually get quick units coming back as bosses, he's going to be one of the best units to use. He's still always going to be very good for Garp challenges as well for the quick rotations. So he is going to stay in S5 for me. Psy, Stampede, Luffy. Great utility, has been a great servant for a long time. He was originally S6 for me, but we did just have the Psy meta where he was quite useful again, so I bumped him back up to S5. He's always going to be good for Psy Garp challenges. I don't think he's good as the V3 Boa for Psy Garp challenges, but he's still a very, very good unit to run. 10 turns of paralysis and also despair reduction in his kit passively is great. I don't like his special ability. It only boosts himself, which we all know isn't the best in the world. It's good for low HP bosses, and low HP bosses these days are like 50 million as the lights decide to go out, unfortunately. But Stampede Luffy, overall, he's just had a lot of good usage over the course of the game. So I think he's going to remain longevity-wise useful. He's always going to have Garp challenges to be useful for. There's most likely going to be scenarios where team building is going to be a bit complex, and having this Stampede Luffy is going to be a great option because he does reduce that the paralysis and the despair. We have got the new Mihawk, who, just like V4 Law, is really good for the int meta. As soon as this int meta disappears, I think this Mihawk might fall off the face of the planet. He does have a 5x attack boost, which remains only if you consistently hit perfects. Now, I know what you guys might be thinking. Oh no, barriers are a big drawback for him. He has the barrier penetration limit break, just like the V4 Law, so you can continuously hit your perfects and maintain that 5x attack boost regardless. Again, it's only for int units. He has an attack boost, which is very nice, but I think this V4 Mihawk is definitely the weaker counterpart of the int units. Not as weak as V3 Katakuri, but I do think he is not as good as V4 Law or V3 Blackbeard as a captain. There's not really much else to say about him. He's really good in PvP, but we're not talking about PvP just yet. Let's move on to the other Mihawk, which is Mihawk and Perona. I did touch on Mihawk and Perona earlier. They are one of those units which are good in niche situations, for example, Garp challenges or anywhere where you can use their switch ability. They're fantastic, but there's so much content in the game where you can't use their switch ability, which kind of makes their special and their switch and their basically entire kit a little bit redundant. But again, if you can use them, amazing unit to have. Gives you a very nice conditional boost, orbs, HP cut, all that good stuff. But if you can't use them, you can't use them. It kind of makes them irrelevant in that sense. So S5 I think is a reasonable position for them to have. Longevity wise, I can't really say anything about longevity. Their longevity really depends on how much all immunity debuff or all debuff protection that enemies will get. The new Sweet Commanders, who are really good for strength teams. They give color affinity, chain boost, and attack boost to strength units. That's very good. They have 10 turns of despair reduction in their captain ability. I would never really use this unit as a captain over V2 Snake Man unless it's for a Dex boss. They do boost all units, but they don't have a universal boost for their attack boost or their color affinity, which is unfortunate. They're like a V4 Sabo on drugs. So yeah, it is what it is. They're nice. I was hoping they'd be the best unit of the batch. I was lucky enough to pull them, but outside of strength units, outside of strength teams, I'm never going to use this unit. I'm never going to use this unit. But just like the Legend Kid, when it comes to units that require, you know, you need to use a Dex team or you need to use a Strength team, these two are like staple units. They're like nailed on as one of the top priorities, like first, second, third best unit to be using in those Strength teams. So that's why I've kept them at S5. Last but not least, S6, Luffy and Law. Now, Luffy and Law, for me, are a dead legend. They are so dead now. On Global, you might be, like angrily grinding your teeth right now. But let me tell you right now, this unit does not see any play whatsoever on Japan right now. Unless you don't have any other Law legend. You don't have any other Luffy legend. They are by far the worst Luffy legend outside of all of the units. In terms of relevancy, in terms of longevity, in terms of overall usefulness, they are definitely the worst outside of all of these ones right now. So Luffy, Sanji are on a different universe, on a completely different universe to Luffy and Law. Yeah, 2.5 times orb boost is nice and all, but we have so many 2.25 times orb boost in the game. Now the 0.25 difference is not gonna make a difference at the end of the day, guys. Maybe in Kizuna you might want it, but that's for the super pay-to-win players that go to Narnia to basically do their damage. But outside of that, they're completely useless now. I know their switchability, a lot of people will be like, oh my god, it gets rid of Orb Seal, it goes through damage reduction and blah blah blah. It's not that useful, guys. You just remove that damage reduction and you just clap them with a 5 times attack boosting captain instead. That's just how it is. I'm sorry, it is the way it is. V3 Law is a better orb booster than Luffy and Law. Luffy Sanji is a superior captain to Luffy and Law. Luffy Zoro, the Stampede Luffy in terms of usefulness is just more straightforward, is just better. The big drawback of Luffy and Law is unfortunately they are a Luffy and a Law unit. They're very outdated in their base 3 times attack boost, guys. In their normal forms, 3 times the 3.5 times. Chopper has 3.5 times attack boost. Flat. It's just not good enough. I mean, if we look at the tier list, guys. Alright, look at Luffy and Sanji. In their base form, 4 times or 3.75 times attack boost. Shanks Crew, 3.5, but with the switch, it's like a 4.25 times attack boost. Luffy, V2 or V2 Snake Man, 3.75 and 5 times. We have 4 times and 4.5 times coming through with the V3 Law. These are just base attack boosts. Not in their final forms either. We have Douglas Bullet 4 times, 4.75 times. Sugar 4.5 times. Chopper 3.5 times. We have Bar Hancock going from basically a 5 times, so 4.2 to 5 times. Everybody on this list, other than Vivi Rebecca, Chopper, and Osama Mask, has a 4 times, minimum 4 times attack boost in their captain ability as their base. Outside of Luffy Zoro, outside of Luffy Law, outside of Mihawk Perona, everybody has minimum 4 times now. We're looking at 3 times, guys. It's not good enough. 3 times, 3.5 times is not good enough for mini bosses anymore. Loads of these units can just use one ability with their mini boss and then clap them. They might not even need to use an ability to clap them. Whereas Luffy Law, very reliant on the units. Their subs really do carry them now. So Luffy Law, for me, very outdated legend. I'm assuming by the end of the year, they will no longer even be a top 30 legend anymore. That's my personal take on it. I do not think in a universe where all these other Luffy and Law variants exist, this unit has that relevance anymore. If you don't have them, as I said, I'm not really catering to the super free-to-play friendly or the super pay-to-win friendly, but if you don't have them and you have an empty box, Luffy Law are still fantastic. They are still a good legend, but if you have other legends in the game, which most people do, I'm sorry. It is what it is. It is what it is. Cara. Cara is up here for her longevity. She's one of those units that will spike in and out of relevance. So Cara on Global, I'm pretty sure there is a raid on Global right now where she's very good. I think she's good for the new Colosseum Crocodile, Colosseum Kizaru, sorry, and the new Raid Crocodile. She's very good for that. Then she's going to disappear for like 1 and 2 months, and then you'll get World Journey events, and she'll come back. Then you'll get like Slasher Limited events, and she'll come back. So she's one of those that goes up and down in relevance, and when she does play, she is the fastest unit to use. So efficiency-wise, speed-wise, for me, as I said, my personal opinion here is obviously going to matter here. For me, speed and efficiency, no one beats Cara in that department when she can actually beat the content. So she will always be hovering around that S5, S6 area. When we get a lot of strength bosses, guys, she's probably going to jump up to like S4, maybe even S3, depending on if they run lots of barriers or damage reduction. Now, we look at V3 Katakuri, which just came out on Global. I'm sorry to break it to you guys, but after this Kizuna, the V3 Katakuri is going to plummet. Not the best choice compared to V2 Blackbeard for GARP challenges. V3 Katakuri, I'm sure if you played with him, he's not that fun to play with. Some people will probably find him fun because they really like the slow grind, but to play around HP, especially if you're not bringing your own HP cutter to reduce your own HP, a lot of teams don't necessarily need to do that. For the V3 Katakuri, you need to rely on enemy to cut your HP. It's not fun. It's not fun. It's very tedious. He doesn't have any orb manipulation in his kit. So for me, this V3 Katakuri wasn't actually in the top 30 originally, but because we are in the int meta right now, his relevance has come back. So since his release, which was like 4 or 5 months ago in Japan, he had no gameplay. Zero gameplay other than doing a few GARP challenges. Outside of that, absolutely zero gameplay where he was first, second, third, fourth, or even fifth choice. And right now, unfortunately, he's not even a top 3 choice to run in the Colosseums because you have the Blackbeard, you have the Mihawk, you have the Law, and even you have like V2 Snake Man, V3 Law, Luffy, Sanji, and also the Bar Hancock as well, competing for other rainbow units that can also use int units as their subs as well. So for me, V3 Katakuri, I love Katakuri, guys. I really wish, same thing with Sweet Commanders, they gave him a better kit, but it is what it is, guys. It's not bad. He's not bad. Obviously, he's not bad because he's in the top 30. So he's not a bad unit. That's not what I'm saying, guys. But his relevancy has taken a hit. His longevity as a result. I mean, they've already released 3 other super type int legends. I don't know if that's a good thing for his longevity. It does mean he has more subs that he can use, which is very nice. But for me, V3 Katakuri is definitely the weakest int super type legend in the game. We have Deadbeard and Halloween Ace. They're both basically here for the usefulness as supports. They're good as subs. They're okay as captains as well. Halloween Ace is actually really good as a captain. I think he's going to be getting a 6+ very soon. His skill books are in the Rayleigh shop. So I do think, even while recording this video, maybe his 6+ information has already been leaked. But I do think he's going to get a 6+, which is going to move him up the tier list. But these two, very good as supports. Kind of irreplaceable because they're the only ones that will remove 3 turns of their respective debuffs. Deadbeard will remove 3 turns of Despair. Halloween Ace, 3 turns of Bind. And then last but not least in this tier list, she's not 30th place, by the way. 30th place for me will probably be the V3 Katakuri or Luffy and Law. But it's going to be Legend Pudding. Now, Legend Pudding, again, we're in the int meta, so she's very useful right now. Outside of that, she's actually very good for niche usages for certain teams in like GARP challenges, forests, those kind of things, and anywhere where you get very difficult interrupts, she's a good unit to have. Normally though, there's multiple ways to get around interrupts. Pudding is one of those options. She's not always the best option, but she is at least an option, which is why I decided to put her in the top 30, because she will have that longevity. As time passes, we're most likely going to get more and more interrupts, and I think in the future her relevance is only going to go up. But for the time being, S6 I think is a good mark to put her at. So yeah, that is the non-PvP included tier list. Let's move on to the tier list which includes PvP abilities and how that's going to shake things up. Alrighty guys, this is what the tier list looks like including PvP. Now, I'm going to try and blast through this really quickly. We all know which legends are good in PvE, and I'm just going to basically say this unit is good in PvP because of this, and therefore it moves them up or moves them down X or Y position. So Shanks Crew, really good for Sashas, really good for universal teams, therefore he moves up to S1. Luffy and Sanji, one of the best units, one of the best DPS units, a universal unit as well, S1. V2 Snake Man, not that good in PvP. However, he's so good in PvE, there's really no reason to move him down. And he can also be used on the mono strength teams. He's actually one of the staple units for the mono strength teams, which are seemingly making a small comeback in PvP. But this guy, whatever kind of box you have, will always be universally useful, whether you're in a free-to-play box, a middle-of-the-pack box, Samuel-to-play friendly box, or a pay-to-win box. Always gonna be very, very, very good. V3 Bar Hancock, really good in PvP. She is an execution unit, will destroy the enemy with the lowest HP by 4,000 fixed damage, debuffs your really large range of enemies by a significant amount. So that's the TLDR. Chopper, again, for PvP, the reason why he's in S2 here is because PvP really relies on candy. The more candy you have, the stronger your units. Chopper's really good for that, so that's a bonus aspect to look at for PvP. V3 Law, really good in PvP. Massive debuffer for enemy driven and powerhouse units, and really good unit for mono sightings, which the V3 Bar Hancock is also very, very good for. Vivi Rebecca, being the best sub in the game, they will hold their position no matter how bad they are in PvP. Just because they're the best sub in the game, they have to hold their position as one of the top 10 units. We have got the Germa 66, which also do fixed damage to 3 enemies. Very, very nice. And also one of the staple units to the mono side team, which makes them tanky. They're there to make them tankier, which is really, really good. And of course, in PvE, amazing, amazing unit. All of these units are very good in PvE. And if they're not good in PvP, it's because they're so good in PvE that they've kept their positions. V3 Akainu, I've moved up. You guys know what he does on global now. He gives universal defense down, which is really good at killing tanks. He will always kill the enemy healer, which is amazing, 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 amazing. Or enemy with the highest recovery, which is normally their tankiest unit. For example, against the Int team or the Slasher team, if they don't have a healer, V3 Akainu will target 6+ Dofi, which is like the core of that team. Once 6+ Dofi is gone, they will start to crumble as well. So this V3 Akainu is amazing. Not only in PvE is he really strong, in PvP, one of the best units you can run. All the Int legends have suddenly skyrocketed, guys. Why? Because the Int mono team is the most busted in PvP. Now, there are 2 variations of this mono team now. You can either go with the Katakuri and Blackbeard route, or you can either go with the V3 Law on the Mihawk route, which is the crit team. So the crit team, or rather, you can kind of mix up. The only unit you can't mix up here is the V3 Mihawk. So the V3 Mihawk relies on crits. And because of that, Shanks Crew, or Shanks, sorry, V2 Shanks, which you can see at the bottom right corner of the tier list there, makes it into the top 30 legends. Not only is that V2 Shanks really good in PvE, especially for Kizuna, and it is the Int meta right now. On top of that, he is the only unit that will give that sustainable crit that you need for the V3 Mihawk, which I personally believe is going to be the strongest team by a mile in PvP when people can complete it. But yes, V3 Law, amazing unit in, V3 Law is an amazing unit in PvP, but V4 Int Law, very good unit in PvP, will silence all your enemies for like 8 seconds on a short cooldown. Very, very obnoxious special, and do damage on top of that while giving 8 speed and level 1 defense down. So 8 speed to all Int units, level 1 defense down to all enemies. That kind of passive, like V3 Akainu, really, really good. V3 Mihawk, oh my god, every time he crits, will reduce your enemy's defense by level 2 for a maximum of 4 times. So minus level 8 defense down permanently, guys. Permanently. That is busted. That is so busted. His damage is through the roof. It's insane. The only problem is it relies on crits. Now, because of that, you will not be able to fit all of these Int units into your team. For example, this Law and this Mihawk will go well with the Dofi because the Dofi will boost Slasher units. You also want to have Jozu in there, and you're also going to want to have either the Int Anel, which is going to give you tankiness to your team, or you need to have the V2 Shanks. The V2 Shanks has to be in that team with the Mihawk as well, so unfortunately, doesn't leave for much diversity there. However, the other Int team you can run can be Law, it can have Blackbeard, it can have Katakuri, it can have Dofi, it can have Pudding in it, it can have V2 Shanks in it, it can have Buggy in it, it can have Int Anel, it can have Int Jozu. So many different variations of this team. Overall, it's the most balanced, most complete team. It has a mix of everything. It can have HP cuts, it can have fixed damage, it can have extremely tanky units, hard to kill units that will slowly chip away your enemies and eventually destroy them. really powerful team. I will never fight this team on Japan ever again because I just get obliterated every single time. Obviously in PvE, they're not that good, and PvP is a completely different story. While I say PvE not that good, I mean they're not as good as, for example, Shanks Crew and Luffy and Sanji. They're still good, but they're obviously not at that level. Whereas in PvP, they are the kings. They are the kings of PvP, but naturally, you will still want units which are the best in PvP and PvE. That's why they come in at a solid S3. Sabo and Koala, also very good for the V4 Mihawk, potentially for a Cerebral team. They're very good for the Free Spirit Crit team. And again, they're very good in the main game as well. V2 Rayleigh, in the main game, actually has a very good special. If you choose to Limit Break plus him, he's still a very good captain as well. But ultimately, he is one of, if not the best universal unit to have in PvP. He's going to be that rainbow tank. He unlocks so many teams. So many teams has this Rayleigh on the team because he is the one that will give all units HP up, defense up, guard rate up, which is pivotal. That is an essential stat to have in PvP, as you guys will have known now after playing it for so long. Or if you're new to global and you're playing it on global, you will know that the tanky teams are the ones that you have to be aware of. So V2 6+ Rayleigh is the universal tank. Really, really, really good unit. And then in PvE, he's like the top of A tier as well as a sub. He's a Free Spirit Cerebral unit. What more do you want? Luffy Zoro, really good for crit teams on JP. Very good in PvE. So yeah, same thing with Cara, good in PvE, very good in PvP, one of the best units to use, so she's been bumped up as well. Sugar, unfortunately, very, very, very reliant on your enemy team, and you can always cherry pick your team, so essentially, she is borderline irrelevant for PvP unless for some reason you choose to take on a mono strength team, which are already very hard to find, especially in the higher ranks. So unfortunately, Sugar, not the best PvP unit in the game. Still a very good captain though, so she does maintain her position, or she drops down only to S4. So, we have Corazon and Rayleigh. Corazon's actually good in PvP, however, again, just like Sugar, kind of reliant on you running up against a full quick team or a team which has a lot of quick units, which is quite common. There are a lot of teams that run a lot of quick units, so Corazon can be used. I myself don't really like using healers because I think it's a very RNG heavy, but if you do like using healers or you like using Free Spirit units or a Cerebral team, then Corazon is one of your staple units to look at. Osoba Mask drops down because he's not good in PvP. Same thing with Sugar, still a good unit in the main game, but nowhere near as useful as any of these other units in PvP, or nowhere near as essential or useful as any of these other units in the main game. For example, Vivio, Rebecca, and V2 Snake Man, while they might not be the best in PvP, they are still useful. Their usefulness is through the roof. Whereas Osoba Mask and Sugar, they're amazing units, but their usefulness, specifically their usefulness or their relevancy or their practicality rather, is a bit more questionable because there's so many other units that can compensate for what they don't have, or they can compensate for what they already do have. So that's the thing with that. It really depends on how much you weigh PvP. For me, in this tier list specifically, PvP is like an essentially a whole other game, and it's kind of equally weighted, which is why people like V2 Rayleigh have come out of nowhere into S3. So I heavily weight PvP for this tier list specifically. Then we have Rayleigh, who again is one of those useful units that you really can't replace in the game, so he remains in that position of S4. Douglas Bullet drops even further down than Osoba Mask, and even further down than Sugar, because Sugar and Osoba Mask kind of have irreplaceable things in the sense that the damage they can give for a lot of different teams is 1, universal, 2, and a lot. Whereas Douglas Bullet only functions as a captain. Sugar and Osoba Mask can function both as a captain and a sub. Douglas Bullet, only really good as a captain, not good in PvP. You can make use of him in bait teams, but ultimately he should not be one of your first choice options in PvP. Not even second, third, or fourth, or fifth option in PvP. A lot of people did unfortunately invest into him, like myself, when they were still relevant before the buffs and PvP changes came. But Douglas Bullet, if you look at PvP, he's definitely not top tier. Legend Kid, good in PvP, but mono Dex teams are definitely one of the weaker mono teams to run right now. He is the best unit for a mono Dex team, but alongside V2 Rayleigh, but yeah, his relevancy is kind of it's still in the balance. It depends where Bandai takes Dex units. Same thing with the Sweet Commander Strength mono teams. Again, kind of making a comeback, but again, the relevancy is very much dependent on what Bandai decides with the PvP meta. They are the attack booster and HP booster for strength teams. Then the Kid, for those of you who don't know, is the HP booster and tank for the Dex team. So defense up for the tank teams. They both have big AoE damage that deals 2 times the attack. So Legend Kid, sorry, I'm losing my voice here. Legend Kid and Sweet Commanders are a very, very similar unit. The other units I talked about earlier, above them, there's not really anything unique about them other than Carrot boosts a lot of unit speed, fixed damage, lots of fixed damage, cooldown reduction, very good unit. But she's on global, so you can read what she actually does. Pudding, she is one of the staple units. I wouldn't say staple, she's one of the optional units for the int team. She will give massive debuffs to powerhouse and slasher enemies, which is really good on global right now. But on Japan, there's a big variation in teams, you can see. So her, again, usefulness is kind of like Corazon and Sugar. It really much depends on the enemy team you're running. There's also so many other options you can run ahead of Sugar. She's really good for Mihawk and Blackbeard though, because she will boost their attack up and up and up and reduce their cooldown as well. We have Kaido, terrible in PvP, but he's got to be in the top 30 still legends for PvE. He's just one of those units. Same thing with Stampy Luffy. They both suck in PvP, but they're such staple units in terms of convenience and usefulness that they have to stay in the top 30 for me speaking. Like Luffy Law, usefulness is just going downhill. Whereas Kaido and Stampy Luffy have, like, you know, they have a stable level of usefulness. Luffy Law just downhill. Luffy Law terrible in PvP as well. You'll never use them. You should never be using them. So yeah, they're out of there for me. 6+ Doflamingo. One of the good driven orb boosters. Not that you should be using driven teams these days, but he's so good in PvP that I have to put him up. He's one of the staple units for int teams, and he's also one of the staple units for driven and slasher teams. So he's got to be in there, guys. You all know how good he is on global. We all know how good he is on Japan for PvP. But outside of PvP, he doesn't see any play. He's a top tier unit in PvP. That's why he just breaks it into the top 30 legends. V2 Shanks. Great in PvP for only int teams if you don't have an int team. So again, this is like catering more a bit to the super pay to win people. However, hypothetically speaking, if you want to run that V4 Mihawk team, V3 Mihawk team, you have to have this V2 Shanks. Even for the normal int teams, this V2 Shanks, very, very good. And overall, as a normal unit in PvE, he's amazing. Full board of orbs, chain boost, attack boost, really, really good. A little bit outdated now because we have so many good units that will also do like a chain boost or an attack boost, like the Sweet Commanders coming through now for strength units. And we have other units who have full board orb manipulation already with an attack boost or an orb boost or something else, like the V3 Law, like the Snake Man, like the Luffy Sanji, like the Bar Hancock. We just don't really need that for a lot of teams anymore. But if you don't have those orb boosters or attack boosters or chain boosters or orb manipulators, then V2 Shanks can cover a lot of those bases for those mono or pseudo mono teams with him as a sub. Tezoro, amazing in PvP, universal cooldown reducer. You'll see him in a lot of defensive teams as well. He can be the make or break unit for identical teams with one unit difference. So very, very good unit. He's still a good chain locker with a low cooldown. Quite usable in Kizuna as well. Because of his low cooldown, you can stall 1 or 2 turns and you'll have him up even if he's not boosted on every single boss, which is a really, really nice thing to have. So ultimately, that is my final tier list. With all things considered, including PvP, this is what my tier list looks like. So that top 3 for me will always remain the same. My top 3 is always going to be Luffy Sanji, Shanks Crew, V3 Law, and then in 4th place will be Vivi Rebecca. So my top 4 will never change. For the time being, it will not change. My top 4, Luffy Sanji, the Shanks Crew, the V3 Law, and then Vivi Rebecca in that order. Depending on whether or not PvP matters or not, it can change a lot who my 5th best legend is. My 5th best legend will probably be V3 Boa or Legend Chopper, whether or not PvP matters. So for me, I would say Legend Chopper, because I really, really do like Chopper. I think his usefulness is unparalleled right now. I rely on him so much, so Chopper is something, holds a special place in my heart. So yeah, guys, that is the tier list done. Top 30 legends. Let me know your thoughts and opinions, especially, guys, top 10 legends. So if you're on global, let me know your top 10 legends. Maybe not the PvP included, because PvP included is a little bit different. It's a bit hard to grasp how good these units are in PvP when they're not actually out on global yet. But let me know your top 5 or your top 10 legends. Do we have the same top 5 units? I think, for the most part, 98% of players watching this video will have the same top 3 to top 5 units as me. So their top 5 will definitely consist of Luffy and Sanji, Shanks Crew in either 1st or 2nd place. And then in 3rd, 4th or 5th place, V3 Law will be there somewhere, Vivi and Rebecca will be somewhere. And then it's a mix-up between V2 Snake Man, the German 66, the Boa, the V3 Akainu, the Blackbeard, the Bullet, the Kaido, or the Sugar. So that will probably, and a Soba Mask, that will probably make up their 5th place position. But I'm confident everybody's top 5 should have Luffy Sanji, Shanks Crew, V3 Law, and Vivi Rebecca in there. Let me know if your top 5 is any different. Let me know what your top 10 is. And thank you so much for watching, guys. Please do leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Remember to hashtag Danka Bandai with a Bellissimo, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye.